Mike, take it away.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Daly. I'm the Director of Operations for SUNY OER Services. I'm joined today by my colleague at the SUNY Center for Professional Development, Chris Price, who's the Academic Programs Manager. I'm happy to have you all with us today. What we're going to attempt to do today is unpack, kind of SUNY's overall effort to provide broad-reaching support for faculty who are either using or considering open educational resources, which we'll shorten to OER. SUNY OER Services and SUNY Center for Professional Development coordinate together to offer Lumen Circle fellowships at no cost to campuses and faculty. We've been doing that for a little over a year. These fellowships offer faculty, SUNY faculty, a structured opportunity to explore effective instructional practices that support student success and faculty success, and learn how to apply these practices to their own teaching while they're teaching. Fellows connect and share ideas with other faculty in their circle, and then critically reflect on the areas they want to grow as teachers, as educators, as learners. So today we're going to offer a facilitated conversation with 5 faculty fellows, and I believe one who's actually facilitating a Lumen Circle, as well as a quick guided tour of Lumen Circles, which are the virtual communities of practice that make the fellowship really a transformative experience for all. You're going to hear directly and learn directly from SUNY faculty about how their fellowship experience expanded their understanding of evidence-based teaching practices and strengthened their teaching and learning. We have agenda. We're at the welcome point right now, so welcome to all of you, and feel free to use the chat at any time with any questions you have, or unmute yourself and use the microphone as well. We want this to be as a dynamic and free-flowing conversation as possible. We're going to start with a brief introduction to Lumen Circles, just to unpack some of the myth and mythology around it. What is Lumen Circles? Why does SUNY offer it? What do SUNY faculty potentially get by joining Lumen Circles? I'll do a brief introduction of the faculty panelists, of which we have 5 today, and appreciate their time this afternoon. And then we'll dive right into the facilitated panel conversation and really hear from them their experiences through this process, and then open it up for questions, answers, and next best steps as our final step. Right, so let's see here. 1 second. Okay. As a reminder to those of you who may already be familiar, and as an introduction to those of you who are not, SUNY OER Services operates under SUNY's Office of Library and Information Services, or OLIS. And our real goal in ensuring that SUNY faculty, are aware of open education resources and have the ability to choose high quality, accessible, peer-reviewed learning materials. And all that is met most easily at our ready to adopt catalog at oer.suny.edu, which has over 100 fully customizable and remixable courses and modules, which come at no cost to SUNY faculty, staff, and students. It really is an impressive collection of content. But as I hope we all learned today, OER in SUNY OER Services is much more than content. So if you can repeat after me, OER is not just about content. What OER really does for students and for faculty is open up pathways we're finding to new ways to understand how students learn, how students themselves learn, how they can unpack difficult concepts, how faculty can approach new ways of teaching and learning and structuring assignments through some of the flexibilities that open educational resources offer. So all that's to say, this session is not about OER. What this session is hopefully to be about is really about success. And obviously, when we talk about any initiative in SUNY, we're focused on student success. How does this help students succeed? So open educational resources, OER, certainly increase access. They provide students with day 1 or the days before classes start with access to their learning materials, whether in the learning management system or a print copy that they can purchase for low or no cost. Open educational resources, because of their licensing, certainly decrease the cost of attendance for SUNY students. And also allow us to leverage excellence. That excellence might be the faculty in the classroom, could be the excellence through some of our partners and our external partners, content providers, our Lumen Learning, and the Open Learning Initiative out of Carnegie Mellon University, as well as RPK Group, which has worked closely with about 30 or 35 of our campuses to develop some financial models so they better understand how they continue some of the great work that their faculty are doing and using open educational resources. We also leverage some internal resources. So SUNY OER Services and SUNY Professional Development, Center for Professional Development work closely together. We also lean on the SUNY Online Support Services and the team at the Health Desk to provide really some critical support for faculty who are entering in or using open educational resources. And the SUNY Press is our partner in providing offline content, whether in print formats or EPUB. So really, it's an ecosystem, a networked ecosystem of partners that bring in critical external and internal supports and offerings. All of these, we hope, increase the success that SUNY students have in the classroom, whether that's in face-to-face, hybrid, high flex, or fully online courses. And over the past 3 years, we've also realized and been able to demonstrate that the real power of OER is not in content, as I said previously, but in providing a space for faculty to critically reimagine and restructure their courses. So our intent in offering SUNY faculty the opportunity to participate in Lumen Learning Circles is to keep the focus on student success by understanding and really underscoring the pedagogical and technological choices that faculty make must be supported in a variety of distinct and different ways. Lumen Circle builds on the faculty and professional developments offered by the CPD that are offered on our various campuses across the SUNY system. That Lumen Circles offer SUNY faculty an online professional development experience in which they critically reflect on current and future teaching practices only furthers the effort SUNY has made and is making to broaden its reach and effectiveness in online teaching and learning. So I'm happy again to be working with Chris Price, as I mentioned earlier, the academic program manager for the Center for Professional Development, who's deeply involved with our faculty development efforts around OER. And Chris is now going to talk about the critical role that critical reflection has in all faculty development efforts.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so Mike mentioned critical reflection a few times in his overview there, and I thought it would be helpful for you all to just kind of get a refresher in case you've forgotten or you're not as familiar with this idea of critical reflection. And the top of the slide there is from one of my favorite writers on teaching and learning in higher ed, Stephen Brookfield. Is, I think, a solid definition of critical reflection. And it's all about checking the accuracy and validity of your teaching assumptions. So and that's, I think, critically important in, improving as a teacher. I mean, I think as you improve as a teacher, as you improve as an instructor, you go through a few stages. You first go through a stage where you flounder a bit, it's all new. And then you kind of, and as you develop a little bit more, you start to sort of recognize that, oh, okay, it's not just about, not making myself look like an idiot in front of my students. You have to kind of, probe a little bit deeper about what it is that you want to accomplish as a teacher and what assumptions you have about learning and how that reflects back on you as a teacher. And so to engage in the process of critical reflection, you need to not just rely on yourself, although that's important, but also others and other sources of knowledge to check the assumptions that you have about learning as a teacher. And so in the book that's referenced there, Becoming a Critically Reflective Teacher, Brookfield says there are different lenses you can kind of use to examine your assumptions as a teacher. Student feedback is an important one, but personal experience as well, as I mentioned, right? And then theory and research is important. But I think that working with colleagues is probably at least the most fun way to examine your assumptions and critically reflect in your teaching. And so when I moved from Brockport to the Center for Professional Development a few years ago, I was looking for ways to pull together faculty and peer groups to collectively reflect on their teaching. We had learning communities at Brockport. They were really successful. And so, and I knew that doing those things face to face would be a little difficult in our system. So I was looking for online ways to do that. And the Faculty Guild program kind of fell into our laps. They were looking for a partner, and that became this Lumen Circle idea. Faculty Guild was initially the company that put together this model, and they went out of business about a year ago. And thankfully, Lumen purchased their model and incorporated it into their offerings for faculty. And so I think it's been a great success. And it kind of goes with this last paragraph here that, it's not enough to just learn how to teach. You also you need a process for continually reflecting on your teaching and figuring out, on a regular basis, how to improve it. So next slide, Mike. So how do the Lumen Circles kind of do all this? So there are skill building activities. So, you do learn, how, in this case, faculty are using OER, learn how to incorporate them more effectively into their courses. But as you see there, it's not just OER focus. We also have focuses for faculty teaching online, or utilizing active learning. So there are a number of different skill building areas of focus that faculty who do the Lumen Circles can choose. That was actually a new piece that Lumen put into place. And again, you could learn how to teach and apply skills, but the weekly practice, reflection, and feedback, I think, is really the secret sauce behind the Lumen Circles model. I mean, you're sharing with colleagues, you're basically figuring out how to explain what you do as a teacher to others, and that piece, I think, is super important. And then there's an assessment component where you're kind of thinking not only about how you teach, but whether or not it's effective and how to evaluate whether or not it's effective. And so to do this, there's a facilitator, as looking at the right-hand column there, you're working with peers, and you're given a framework for students that are teaching. And there are lots of resources that you can consult in the process as well over the weeks that you're involved in your Lumen Circle. Next slide, Mike. Now, one of the things that's really important to critical reflection is just having a framework to talk about your teaching. And this, what you're looking at the screen now, was in the Faculty Guild model, and it was based on the book Taking College Teaching Seriously by Gail Mello. It was based on research that they did. She was at LaGuardia. She was the president of LaGuardia Community College, and they did a study of what evidence, what sort of teaching practices lead to student learning, to effective student learning practices. And so they came up with these 4 sort of themes that are kind of woven throughout the Lumen Circle experience. And so each theme has sort of sub-themes, as you're seeing below. And as you're working in your circle, you tag your posts that you put in the circle to the themes below, the sub-themes below the major themes. So you're kind of building up a portfolio of what you're focusing on as a teacher. And so recognizing that we're all different, we all teach different things, we're all at different stages of our career, we all have different backgrounds. And so what you come out of, and the faculty who are here today who participated can speak to this much better than I can, but at the end of the process, you come out with a better understanding of who you are as a teacher. And again, going back to the idea that critical reflection is all about examining and questioning your assumptions, that's an important piece in the process. And so I'm going to kick it back to Mike.
Thanks, Chris. Just to kind of represent in a diagram form kind of what a Lumen Circle is, all Lumen Circles have a common foundation. That's the framework of evidence-based teaching practices that Chris just kind of walked us through that improve student success, adapted, as Chris said, from Gail Mello's book. Lumen Circles invite faculty to explore these practices and become more thoughtful, more deliberate about their pedagogical choices as they're working to create learning environments that are really conducive to their student success. So it's really reflective as a teacher, as a learner, as a student viewpoint. And their circle theme is a lens through which they can explore and apply these teaching strategies. So I think it's important to make clear and publicize again that as SUNY faculty, you do not have to be using Lumen courseware or Lumen OER or anything that Lumen offers to participate in Lumen Circles. All you have to be is a SUNY faculty member who is interested in engaging with other faculty members from SUNY, from other SUNY campuses, as well as faculty members from outside of New York State, and coming together in that reflective practice that Chris kind of talked about. I will say that I believe there's 9 circles running this spring. 3 are being facilitated by SUNY faculty. So these are SUNY faculty who went through kind of the very first iteration of Faculty Guild, went through Lumen Circles in the fall, and then stood up and said, wow, this is really awesome. I want to be a facilitator and actually guide my colleagues through this process. So we're really happy to see that maturation of the program. Before we move into introducing our speakers, I want to stress out or tease out some other language you might hear our speakers mention, just so it's clear. The Lumen Circle fellowships are usually groups of 12 to 15 or so people. They may be faculty from different institutions, faculty teaching in similar disciplines. So there's some discipline focused circles, faculty growing in the same direction, and faculty kind of all moving together in the same, the same goal. So Lumen Circle fellowships is kind of the big bucket, and these are 9 weeks in duration. It's their audience is really any faculty member who can choose a theme. Again, that lens might be active learning. We're really excited that Lumen is working on a diversity, equity, and inclusion themed circle that'll start in the fall 2021. And they've already recruited some SUNY faculty to be peer reviewers of some of that content. An evidence-based teaching circle, evidence-based teaching with Lumen courseware. So if you are specifically using Lumen courseware, you could opt into that one. An online teaching foundation, and a teaching with OER and open pedagogy. The cost is at no cost to SUNY faculty or campuses. And all we ask is that faculty either be using OER or considering using OER as kind of an entry point into consideration for a Lumen Circle fellowship. For SUNY faculty who are using Lumen courseware, again, always their choice, and I believe we have a couple on the call today that are doing that. There is the option to enter into a slightly more focused circle called Success Accelerator. These are 6-week sprints. These are focused on faculty members using Lumen Waymaker or OHM. And these really focus on course design and customization within those courseware opportunities, the use of data, how data can better inform some of the choices and decisions that faculty are making in their courses, engaging students, how some of the built-in tools, some of the early alert and nudging systems can be leveraged to encourage student success, and then that peer sharing and community. So again, 2 kind of big buckets, Lumen Circles Fellowships and Success Accelerator. Again,
Mike, I think your slides got stuck on the Lumen course slide.
Thank you.
Sorry, yeah.
No, it's fine.
So now we see the fellowships slide.
Great. Success Accelerator. All right. And again, any questions on those, feel free to use the chat, or we can circle back to these slides after our panel conversation. So our panelists today, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, but very simply, your name, your institution, department, what circle theme or themes you participated in, and then in 1 sentence or less, how would you describe Lumen Circles Fellowship to your colleague? So we're going to start at the top. Trudy Jacobson, take it away, Trudy.
Thanks, Mike. I am in the information literacy department at the University at Albany. I teach undergraduate and graduate courses, and I was in the fall the evidence-based teaching circle, and this spring I am in the teaching with OER and open pedagogy circle.
Great. And one quick description, how you describe, or how would you describe Lumen Circles to your colleagues, Trudy?
An excellent way to sort of have sustained time to reflect on one's teaching.
Great, thanks. Nicole Simon, if you want to introduce yourself real quickly.
Sure, Nicole Simon, Engineering Physics Technology Department, Nassau Community College. Last year, I was in the Faculty Guild, in the fall and the spring in evidence-based learning. Last fall, I was in the Lumen Circle OER and open pedagogy, and this semester I'm facilitating the OER and open ed resources.
Great. And your description to colleagues at Nassau Community College of Lumen Circles, Nicole, as you give it?
I do it in one word: inspiring. It's a wonderful way to take a deeper dive into what you teach, how you want to reflect for your students, how you want to build out what it is that you're doing for your students, and really keep learning for your students.
Excellent. I like that a lot. Rob, I'm going to go to you next.
Thanks, Mike. Rob Favor, I'm at SUNY Adirondack. I'm in the English division teaching writing and literature courses. In the fall, I was with both Trudy and I were in the evidence-based teaching circle. And this semester, I'm in the active learning circle. And I mean, I see it as a pretty concentrated opportunity to step back, slow down, reflect, as people have been saying, you know, not just on your own, because I can reflect on my own, but in a space of collaboration and mutual aid. Yes, that was all 1 sentence.
I knew it was. You're an English major. All right, Sophia from Tompkins Cortland.
So I'm following the English major here with a very strong accent. So I'm Sofia Georgiakaki. I teach math at Tompkins Cortland Community College. In the fall, I was in the OHM Success Accelerator. So it was a math-focused group of SUNY and out-of-state faculty. And in I signed up for the diversity, equity, and inclusion second part, which is either going to run in the summer or in the fall. So for now, I chose to not do something else, but wait for the diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is basically not math centered. And to me, this was indeed a success accelerator. That's what it was. It was an excellent long-term 5-6 weeks sharing session between faculty who use the same product and either have a lot of experience with it or less experience, but have a lot of questions of why things work, why things don't work, and how it works for some and not for others, what methodology they use to increase student engagement and success. And to me, it was an ideal professional development after teaching math that basically doesn't change much for many years, and after using OER for also many years.
Thank you, Sophia. Glad you could join us today. And Rachel, last but certainly not least, your brief introduction and how you describe Lumen Circles to your colleagues at New Paltz.
Right, so I teach mainly developmental writing, though I have some lit courses at SUNY New Paltz. And in the fall, I was in a Waymaker Accelerator group, and that was really interesting to get up to speed with the text that I was using, the courseware. And this spring, I'm with Trudy in the Teaching with OER and OEP. And I guess I would say, and I think Mike used the metaphor of this kind of ecosystem. I came up with the metaphor of a refuge as a kind of a space, a refuge for collaboration and reflection, a kind of nice virtual space for me.
Great, thank you. And thanks again to all our panelists. Before we jump into questions, what struck me, and I think what always strikes Tony DeFranco and Mark McBride and others in SUNY OER Services, when we look at the faculty that kind of step up and voice their desire to participate in Lumen Circles, it's just the appetite across disciplines, across sectors, across expertise, across a number of years teaching, faculty who are seeking to engage in content outside of their expertise. And so Sophia mentioned, really wants to dive into the diversity, equity, inclusion circle, not necessarily math. And that has been reoccurring really every semester since we started with Faculty Guild, now Lumen Circles, across SUNY, is just faculty really seeking out opportunities like this, which is, I think, really powerful. And I think the more ways we can kind of bring up these issues, that there is a need for this. There is certainly a desire for faculty to remain informed, to be, in a sense, students again, to keep learning and to bring those lessons back to their classrooms. So I'm going to do kind of a roundtable conversation here. Chris and I will bounce some questions off the panelists. Certainly encourage all of our attendees today to use the chat again to ask any questions you want. More than willing to entertain those, or turn on your microphone and join the conversation. So the first question, and I'm going to start with Rob with this one, if he wouldn't mind, how his experience impacted what he does or what he did as a teacher, and how he engages with students. So Rob, I'll start with you in that one, and everybody else can kind of be thinking on that question.
Thanks, Mike. I mean, I've been at SUNY Adirondack I'm in my 28th year there, so I'm not coming into Lumen as a new teacher. That doesn't mean I don't have things to learn. Last fall's circle and I think this spring circle are these good opportunities to reflect on this transition we've had to make to online and remote teaching because of the pandemic. I had been rethinking some of my approach to teaching hybrid courses for engineering students and nursing students at the community college, and had actually moved back away from being online with students to be more face-to-face. And then last spring happened. And so all of a sudden we were thrust online. So I found that this past fall and this spring are this useful occasion. I like this idea of an ecosystem or a refuge or a haven, a space to reflect. It just so happens that this year for me is a sabbatical year, and I'm teaching part-time, which means instead of a 5-5 load, I taught 3 in the fall and 2 in the spring, which some people tell me is a full-time load at some places. But So it's been a nice occasion to, reflect on the situation that we're teaching in now, but I'm also thinking, forward, and I've been writing about this some, what is this going to mean after the pandemic, right? What's this going to look like after that? So I found last semester's focus on evidence-based teaching, made me think of reflection in terms of, what Chris was saying about examining and questioning assumptions. What were my assumptions as, somebody's been teaching for a while, and how did those get shaken up by the situation and by having a greater awareness of student situation by looking at my own. But also this semester, thinking about active learning, how is that going? I'm looking at how to make both the online component, synchronous and asynchronous, more active for students. And so I'm, starting to work on reflecting on that. And, we're 3 weeks in to this one, and, we've written I think we're 2 weeks in, and we've written 2 reflections. And, I'm looking forward to what's going to come out of that in the next, 7 weeks after today. And, the group I'm in seems pretty responsive.
Thanks, Rob. Nicole, I'm gonna bounce to you because I saw your head nodding, and also I wanted to go there because you're somewhat different discipline than Rob, English, and to the scientists. So just, your changes as a teacher in terms of engaging students, what this experience kind of fostered for you.
Absolutely. I agree with Rob that it really helps you collaborate. You get a great opportunity to do a deeper dive into how it is that you're teaching. I too am not coming into this as a new faculty member. I've been teaching for over 20 years. And I think sometimes we get a little bit stagnant in what we teach, how we teach, or unfortunately, why we do certain things. And it's a great opportunity to take a look, take a step back and really assess how it is that we teach, not just in content, but in our own methodology, and being able to collaborate both with SUNY faculty and faculty from across the country. Really, it's a wonderful opportunity to take a deeper dive, whether it's more looking at evidence-based learning or OER or whatever your theme happens to be. What is it that you want to focus on? What is it that you want to build out? And if you go back to those, we'd seen earlier, those different support techniques, there's 4 different major overall themes throughout Lumen Circle. Just taking a look each week, what is it that you want to focus on? How do you want to build that into your courses, into just even one lesson? Taking a look how you can get students more involved in just one tag at a time, one little evidence-based teaching practice, and then start curating that over each different lesson, each different week, each different course. And it's such a wonderful way to start really taking a deeper dive, like I said, on how we can transition our teaching for modern day teaching.
Great, thanks, Nicole. That one thing calls back. I was on a session yesterday in the SUNY Online Summit with Larry Dugan with the SUNY Online coaches. We're talking about, if you just do one thing for your student, it might be the thing that really changes their trajectory. And I think, the multiple ways we can all do one thing build to, a really mass. Trudy, I want to move to you as well. You're in a discipline I know well, notoriously hard to sometimes engage students, information literacy, meta literacy. And in your kind of feedback when I was polling participants who might serve on this panel, you said, I made some changes I didn't think I was ever going to make. So I'm just wondering if you could kind of, what was that spark or that spur that said to you, oh, I can make this change? Was it through Lumen Circles? Was it just kind of a culmination of a buildup? If you could speak to that at all.
Yeah, and Mike, I'm trying to remember what I was thinking when I wrote that.
Yeah, I put you on the spot. My apologies.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I did the evidence-based practice one with Rob in the fall. And so I've also, like Nicole and Rob, have been teaching for quite a long time. And I was teaching for the first time a first-year experience course. Normally I teach seniors and graduate students in the credit courses that I teach. So this was a really different experience for me. It was synchronous online, and normally my online courses are asynchronous. So that was new to me. And sustained encounters with first-year students were new. And then, of course, there was everything surrounding the pandemic. So I sort of felt like I was really sort of out of my element, and having the support of the others in the group. I know, Rob, we had some conversations and others as well, really helped a lot, because I at times had no idea what I was doing. And I think perhaps what I meant, Mike, when I had said that was I ended up doing a lot more with like the caring aspect. If we talk about those tags where we saw the 4 of them, the supportive ones, I thought that my course was going to be more content-based. I did use the Lumen I Succeed course, which was really helpful. But it felt really like it was a support course, sort of a how are we going to get students through the semester kind of course, which is so different from what I usually do. And so having people there sort of as cheerleaders and providing good ideas was really important.
No, thanks for sharing that, Judy. I think it's often overlooked, kind of the supports that not often overlooked. It can be overlooked. The supports that faculty need, engaging in kind of the day to day, and where those supports are found or not found, is critically important to understand as we all seek to grow. I'm going to turn it over to Chris to ask a question at this point.
Sure thing, Mike. So you can all talk about how the program impacted what you do as a teacher. And how you engage with your students. So did you see any immediate impact?
Your audio is a little low, Chris. Just, sorry.
That's because my microphone's on the floor. How about that? Let me try that again. So how did the program impact what you do as a teacher in the moment? How did you engage your students differently? What effects did you see on what you did in your practice at all? So yeah, Rachel, you want to go first?
Well, and I would say, just kind of building too on what Nicole said, that sometimes it's just easy to do a tweak. And I think that's one thing I would say is not to be scared of doing this. It's not like you have to devise an entirely new lesson plan, but tying into the circle and something that I did that I never thought I would do, kind of along the lines what Trudy was saying. The open education pedagogy piece of this made me rethink something I was doing in an upper division course where I was assigning, a certain amount of reading that students had to do. And by reading some of the material and thinking about the caring aspect, but also giving student agency, I stepped back and I said, pick a story that you really didn't read to the end. This is a short story course. Why didn't you read it? So I gave them the ability not to do the reading as long as they just told me why they didn't finish. And it was the best discussion I've had all semester. The best, the most authentic. And I don't think I would have done that had I not been in this Lumen circle. So.
It's a great example, Rachel. Anybody else want to chime in?
I'd like to actually go back to last spring when everything kind of hit the roof. We were still under, faculty guild at the time, but same idea with Lumen Circle. Here, every campus shut down. Everybody had to flip their teaching methodology on a dime. And now you're thrust into, okay, so now I'm in a supportive network with people in my discipline. Maybe I can reach out to them. So just having that support system where you can rely on other faculty. Yes, you have your departments, you have your campuses, you have the entire SUNY network, but being able to get a different perspective on how can we get the students through this semester and even to the fall. So now we're in a little bit different environment. It's certainly not like last spring, but it's certainly not like last fall either. How do we start to build and collaborate and build something together? So it's not just you're in your own little silo. It's I'm in a discipline. I have tons of people who can help and support me, and I can throw an idea out and plan it this week. You can give me feedback before anything ever happens. And then next week I can tell you what happened. And everybody loves jumping in and saying, so everyone's very eager. What happened? How did it go? How can I support you? How can we take it to the next step? And like I said before, you just keep adding a little bit more each week and start building out all of your courses. You're not redoing your courses. You're just adding to them in such a beneficial way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Nicole. I actually did a circle myself back in the fall of 19. And it's a course I've taught a lot. I wasn't really interested in redesigning it. So I just wanted to see what it'd be like to do it, you know, and do it. And frankly, I didn't have a ton of time to do it. So I really did the minimum amount of time that they recommended, and I still got a lot out of it. And so I think that's, you know, a lot of times we think, oh, it's just it's going to be so much work. We're going to have to redesign our courses. They're going to make us do everything differently, or I'm going to be judged as this horrible teacher. And we all kind of get down on ourselves, when it really is the kind of a situation where you get as much out of it as you put into it. But even if, and I tell the people this all the time when they ask about it, I say, because they ask, how much time is it going to take? And I usually tell them, well, it takes take as much time as you put into it. And even if you put like a couple hours, an hour or two a week, you're going to get a lot out of it. So it really meets you where you're at, which is ideal for for any kind of professional development. Anybody else want to chime in? Trudy, yeah. And then Rob.
So one of the things that I like doing is, when we're in a more normal situation on campus, is just sort of talking to my colleagues in the hallway. You know, what are you doing in your class? How's it going? Getting good ideas. I don't have that opportunity right now. So, so I've got both the opportunity to work with others and get feedback, and also people from other disciplines. Since the one I'm in this spring has one other librarian in it, there wasn't one in the fall. So it's a very sort of expansive experience in that way.
Yeah, and to build on what Trudy and Nicole have said, you know, some of it can come from interacting with people like in the hallway, which is casual unless you set up a structure. But with, you know, this experience where you've got a schedule that you're working on, almost like you're taking a graduate class, it's a workshop, but you have this regular structure. And the other folks who are there are also folks who are, you know, they have this time set aside to do this, whether it's within the advertised time of a couple hours a week, or whether you, as a couple of you were saying, you might put in more hours one week. It might take you longer to do the reading, or to respond to somebody, or to reflect. But, you know, add up all the time that you're talking to people in the hallway, and I don't think it's going to add up to the, you know, 2, 3, whatever hours of focused time with people who aren't volunteering to talk to you in the hallway and maybe would rather scurry away, but are folks who are also opting to be there. And so that's been valuable for folks in my discipline and, you know, across the disciplines.
I think Sophia, and then we'll go back to Rachel.
For me, that I attended the specific LMS Success Accelerator, it was an interesting experience, because in the first week we did the evidence-based review of all the categories and the tags and things that influence our instruction and the design of our courses. But then we went on to the LMS and we explored how the structure of the LMS, of the open courseware, is designed in a way that supports all of these effective practices. So it was very interesting for us to see why certain features exist in our homework, in our email, in our resources to students, the way the courseware is designed, the way the homework is designed, why algorithmically, why not sometimes, why can you email the instructor, why don't you, why allow multiple attempts, why not to, you know, why allow a second better grade. So it was very helpful for us to actually have used the system multiple times and then go back and look at it through evidence-based teaching practices. So, for example, one thing that I ended up changing during that semester, my fall semester, is it was my first time that I was completely remote from my students. So unless they had had me in a previous semester, they didn't know me in person. I needed an activity that was interactive, and I was able to do a polling review before the final exam for a couple of days, where I was posting a question and my students would respond dynamically through the LMS. And I wouldn't have known that this existed, or that the software has the potential, had I not attended the circle. And I knew that at the time that I was doing the circle, which was the beginning of the semester, I was just overwhelmed and I didn't have time to do the activity, but I discussed it enough throughout the circle that I was ready towards the end of my semester to implement it and have asked all the questions and have received enough information for me to successfully apply it for the first time. So there were a lot of ways for us to rethink of our courses and to get feedback from people who have used certain features and have been successful, or why we don't want to bother going into that direction at the first semester of fully remotely teaching.
Sophia. Rachel, did you have anything to add after that? I didn't know if you were.
Actually, Sophia has me wanting to take this other circle now. I just wanted to add one kind of thing that happened to me with these circles is that you're meeting people, of course, across disciplines, and that's always fun, to talk to a math person. But what is interesting is that you're meeting people, for example, I had designed I think it was I don't know, maybe it's 2 years ago now, or a year ago, I designed a complete set of lessons, and it turned out I was using stuff that Trudy had created, and it was just kind of neat to like, oh my God, that's who it is. It's like that's the real person. So there's that other aspect of the hallway conversation, but it's like throughout, whoever's in your group, and it was just, I stumbled across it. So that was really neat for me.
Thanks, Rachel. Before we move on to the next question, just a thread, and I'm glad, Rob, you brought up the time commitment, or the suggested time commitment. That's really kind of based on individual attention and focus and things you want to bring to it. I think the suggested about an hour or two a week. But going back to kind of the refuge or the haven or the ecosystem metaphor that's kind of been brought up a few times. In the resource slide, which everybody will get, it's the last slide on this deck when we share it out. There's a short video, it's about 3 or 4 minutes long. It's a nice kind of capture of SUNY faculty experiences last fall. And there's a faculty member there from Monroe Community College who talks about, being in a circle with a relatively large group of faculty from a maritime institution in Massachusetts. And she was a business faculty member teaching business law, and there was really no commonality in disciplines. And she was blown away that they were all facing trying to answer the same questions in terms of engaging students. And she was like, it was just absolutely affirming to me that it wasn't my problem. Like, it wasn't just something I was doing wrong. And that kind of, that refuge, that haven, that cloak of, kind of okayness that she was able to wrap herself in really was enlightening to her. And she made some significant friends and colleagues, but also realized that, some of the challenges that we have or may have as faculty, as instructors, aren't self-limiting. I think they're kind of universal challenges. And I think it's okay to share. And if the ethic of OER is about sharing our experiences as educators, as students, as creators, is certainly not something to overlook. So next question, and I'm going to assume, knowing most of you and your vast experience in SUNY and
Mike, Trudy had something she wanted to add.
Go ahead, Trudy.
Yep. Just really quickly, if this has already been mentioned, I missed it and I apologize, but I just wanted to let people know that at least in these longer circles, you can opt out up to 2 weeks, so that if you have a very busy time, you can do that.
Thanks for that, Trudy. So again, knowing most of you through your introductions and personally as well, this isn't probably, I'm going to guess, your first professional development experience. You probably have a nice folder, a nice CV of kind of professional development experience, either you've participated in or maybe led or created. But specifically about this experience, the most valuable thing you took away, broadly speaking. And so I'm going to go back to Nicole really quickly, and then anybody else feel free to jump in.
Sure. The thing that I could take away the most from this is that really you're doing that collaboration. Like I keep saying, you keep doing that deeper dive. You're taking a look at what it is that you're learning from what it is that you're teaching. So it's not just about your disciplines, not just about the content. It's going back. I mean, how many of us have actually gone through education courses to really sit down and think about why it is that I'm teaching a certain way or a certain format? and being able to take that format, share with your colleagues, see what works, what doesn't, especially when you're looking at teaching remotely. Not everybody's comfortable with it. Not everybody's comfortable teaching online. And I love that we're able to share and really be a very good support network. And like Sophia said earlier, that it's not just about, okay, I have to create it and I have to do it next week. No, 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 you can plan it. You can get feedback. People can tell you what to anticipate. You can sit down and anticipate. And if you don't do it for a month, there's no pressure. There's no pressure at all to sit down and say, okay, so I'm doing this weekend and I'm teaching it on Monday. No, you're planning it. And what can we support you and help build this model? And then if you're able to teach it, fantastic. And if not, what it is that we kind of overlooked and what can we help you in the future with? So I think there's that great support model that you can take back. And like I said, keep changing a little bit at a time, being able to introduce that OER material along the way.
Thanks. Anybody else want to chime in? Sophia?
So for those of you who know me, I am very passionate, right? Mediterranean. So I have always been a very passionate instructor, but I have never been an intentional instructor. So I think that the circle helped me concentrate a little bit more on how does it look for the student and not how enthusiastic I am for the subject and for the use of OER and for having the ability to have the content available to my students, but also how do I engage them with the content? How do I make them feel creative? I remember in the very beginning, we have to score ourselves, and you know, I scored myself so low in like having a good time with the content. And in reality, you can have a good time with the content. If you can turn a math into a game, then you can. So that's why I thought that the interactive review at the end would be a very good way to engage students and to maybe bring them, you know, bring them back to lecture. How was it when I was lecturing and I was asking questions and you were answering, and how will it look at the exam? So to me, I think it made me a little more intentional on how I want to deliver the instruction and how I want my assignments to look like to students. How do I want the remote lecture to look like? How do I want their time away from the lecture to look like, to keep them more engaged with the content?
Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I like Sophia's point about intentionality. I mean, part of my background in teaching is co-teaching developmental studies students, you know, underprepared students, and co-teaching a seminar with a math teacher, a counselor, and either the reading or writing teacher will be in there. And you have to have collaborative intentionality if that seminar is going to work and it spills off into the other classes. So there, the reflection and the planning and the intent was required. It was a part of, and it was a part of our, you know, it was a part of our time that we were compensated for. You're teaching 5 classes a semester. There's only so much time to reflect, right? So I'd like that in the circles, that reflection is baked into that process. And it's a kind of, again, collaborative reflection. I'm not writing Dear Diary. When I write my reflection, I'm thinking about who are the 2 people that are assigned to respond to me, or, you know, who are the people I'm going to respond to, and are they going to think I'm long-winded again? So I'm kind of writing with that audience in mind, you know, not that causes me to edit what I have to say, but it causes me to reflect, being aware that, you know, the stakes are only as high as I make them. It's, you know, it's about support in this kind of mutual environment.
And Trudy, go ahead. And then Chris, I'm going to ask you to kind of voice your comment you put in the chat, if you don't mind.
So besides the very supportive environment we've all been talking about, I agree with Sophia and Rob about that intentionality. So those tags, which are we saw the 4 things like the supportive, those categories underneath them, those finer grained items. It's a really good opportunity to see where you're strong and perhaps where you're not so strong, and what you might want to do to increase what it is you aren't using. And as you reflect on what it is you're doing or what it is you'd like to be doing, you're going to be tagging what it is you're writing about, but then also seeing it through others' eyes. Like they'll pull in tags that I missed. But it's also really interesting if I see that I've concentrated on this one, 47 times and this one once, maybe I've got some work to do.
Okay. All right, Chris, I'm going to put you on the spot. You put a nice comment in the chat. Just wondering if you could talk about that a little more.
Sure. Yeah. So, one of the things that I think, we tend to get very teach in isolation and private for the most part, right? Like we are always kind of lost in our own course unless we force ourselves out of that sort of private space to make what we do public with colleagues. And I that's why I see this kind of experience the most important piece of this kind of experience, because once you're forced to put into explain what you're doing and put it into terms that those who don't understand your content area can understand, you then start to have these kind of like, well, why do I really do that anyway? And then if the reasons aren't good, then it kind of forces you to maybe rethink it or change it and adapt it. So it's a kind of very organic process, as opposed to, well, you do it because someone tells you to do it, or that's the way it's always been done. It's a way that where you can really kind of make your teaching who you are. And when you're doing that with people that you don't know really well, frankly. So, people who you know really well, who you talk about with teaching, you can kind of use shortcuts for how you explain things. You can, be very informal. But, in these circles, while they are not super formal, you still, kind of, try to put your best foot forward. And I know for some people, like, and I don't know if you found this, Robert, as someone who teaches in English, like I have a brother who teaches as an adjunct at Farmingdale and Suffolk, and he did it. He did a circle, I think, last spring. And he said that in his circles, it took him a lot longer than me because they were all English faculty. And so they're all kind of trying to one up each other, like they all trying to create these carefully crafted, prose in their discussion forums. I'm like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. That's on you. But anyway, my point is that, I think that forces us, though, I think a little bit, we need kind of a little bit of push into, when we're working with other people that we don't know, to, again, come up with good reasons and start to really think carefully about why we do what we do.
Thanks, Chris. Rachel, go ahead.
I was going to say, though, there are two things in terms of, the English people, we're always writing too much, but you can also video yourself. And I've done that a few times when I'm just so tired of typing out responses. So if you don't like to type a lot, you can do that. But the other thing we didn't really mention, but which I find really helpful, are like these ideas that have been posted, this repository of great teaching ideas that I can try out. And you can search in this repository, what do they call it? The idea drawer? And so it's not like you're just inventing something out of the blue. You can go look for something that someone else has done. Sorry, that's my ESPN.
Oh, you're still muted, Rachel.
That's all I had to say, was that, there are resources there. It's not as if you're going to have to reinvent everything, that there are these resources that we have on hand.
No, that's great. I think, again, that idea of sharing and openly sharing. For those of you who attended the last session at the SUNY Online Summit, I think Molly Mott from Canton was talking about, as you enter into designing courses in new modalities, high flex or hybrid, to find your team, whether that's a campus team or an external team. And I think that idea of finding a like-minded support group can come in many different ways, depending on kind of what you're after. And for me, Lumen Circles and hearing faculty again share their experiences, it is kind of finding that team, whether intentionally or unintentionally. I want to shift gears a little bit, and I didn't prep her for this, so I entirely apologize. But Nicole, knowing that you're a facilitator, I'm just wondering if you could share your perspective on kind of, Chris mentioned the quote unquote secret sauce that is kind of Lumen Circles, that reflective piece. What do you see, or what have you seen as a facilitator that kind of engages faculty like yourself and your colleagues as well? Is it the design? Is it the construct? Is it the platform? Is it everybody coming together for 1 to 2 hours a week? Kind of what's going on behind the scenes that is making this a productive experience for faculty?
Sure. Think about it. We're all educators. So what's our first and foremost thing? We want to help and support each other and help and support our students. So here you have a platform where you're taking little bites out of curating your material through OER each week. You're focusing on certain tags, what it is that you can bring into your lesson, what it is that you can get out of your lesson, what is it that you can share and we can help you out with. But really having that support model where we're taking a small bite each week, we're taking a look at what we can do, we are taking a look at how we can support one another. I know that I usually have my one-on-one meetings with my circle ahead of time. So I'll sit down and find out who they are, what they teach. I think that's very important, understanding why they're doing the circle, why they're taking a look at, my circle happens to be OER, but why they're really trying to incorporate into their class, more importantly, where they are in the process. Because if you know where you are in the process, you know where you can build. So I have people who are just starting out that don't even know what OER means, all the way up to myself where it's like, so I switched everything over to OER material. What else can I do next? Now moving on to open pedagogy. So being able to take a look at what it is that you're trying to get out of the circle. As a facilitator, I'm trying to get more from my circle members, more from my fellows. I want them to be able to build out. I want them to be able to use more resources, learn about it, curate it, start incorporating into their classes. So I think it's really important to think about what it is that you're trying to get from it and how everybody can best support you, whether it's small pieces or whether you're starting to take a larger dive throughout the 9-week process.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Nicole. Thanks for facilitating as well. I'd forgotten you were doing that. So turning again to the metaphor team, we don't have the hallway conversations as Trudy mentioned, and others in the chat are lamenting kind of those quick conversations in the hallway of what's working, what's not working. But imagining that we do, Sophia, I'm going to start with you on this one. You know, what would be your encouragement to a colleague who's deciding whether or not to participate in Lumen Circles? What would be kind of your words of advice?
So of course it depends on the circle that you choose. So I chose diversity, equity, and inclusion for my second circle because I wanted to learn something new and currently very applicable in my multiple roles on campus, apart from instruction. But also, this is a hands-on sharing and engaging experience. So if you are the type of person who likes to just attend conferences and lectures and sit in the back and listen and absorb, this is not for you. So you have to be able to share activities, try new things, inquire about why some things that maybe don't work for you work for others, or how do others make it work. Really get involved in the people in your circle. You need to read their reflections, so see if they have great ideas, or see if they say something that you don't understand and ask for more clarification. So to me, I was at a level where I was using this particular platform for so many years. I was using the platform before it was conceived even. So we started with OER. My Open Math was created in 2012. I was using my Open Math in one of the first courses, like my course number was number 34 in the creation of the whole system. And then it transferred into the online homework manager. And I was using online homework manager from the very beginning of its creation. And at some point, you still want to improve your instruction. You cannot just be doing the same thing over and over. So even if you think that you have mastered everything and you know everything, there is always room to learn. And I think the only way to learn at this stage is to have the hallway conversation with people who are using the same product or who have the same questions with you and who also want to improve their teaching. And they are not happy with just, being where they are and cruising the plateau until retirement comes, but they do want to keep things interesting and engaging. So to me, it was a necessary professional development that I was looking, and in time of COVID, I couldn't have in any other way, or in any other better way than this particular way. Another thing I want to say is that I was very impressed. So I'm not a research person, I never got a PhD, but I was very impressed in how thoughtfully the Lumen Circles platform is created in a way that keeps us engaged, keeps us organized, and actually follows the 4 pillars, the supportive, challenging, varied, and organized, that they ask us to use in our instruction. They have already embedded in the platform. So I thought it was a very good model for how I would like my courses to look like.
Thanks, Sophia, for sharing that. Rob, I'm going to go to you. In the halcyon days when everybody's on campus on Bay Road at SUNY Adirondack, you're walking down the hall and your colleague says to you, I'm thinking about Lumen Circles. You say?
I'll say do it, because in terms of professional development, there's the professional development that faculty would choose, and then there's the professional development that other people would choose. And there's some pretty interesting stuff that's proposed to us sometimes, and we're like, are you kidding me? I would do that? No. So, I mean, I agree with what folks have been saying and what Sophia's just said too, that, it's a little bit like taking a graduate seminar in pedagogy. And, I did get my doctorate, after being at my college, for many years, and I did it while teaching full time. So I said something about the time commitment. This is nothing like what it took to take one graduate class at SUNY Albany, right? It's not that. There's no grading, right? You can't take 2 weeks off. You can't opt out for 2 weeks in a grad class. So it's definitely, it doesn't have the terror and rigor of submitting to the doctoral process. It's, supportive, and you get out of it what you put into it. And I agree with Sophia and others that, active engagement in terms of the kinds of things that as a faculty member I'm interested in and would want to work on and deploy in the classroom, for sure.
All right.
Yeah, I just want to say too, to build on what Robert said really quickly, I don't know if we mentioned it or if we did it was quickly in passing, but the model is based on the idea, and the process that you go through with your other members of your circle is, and what the facilitator model is, I'm sure Nicole is learning all about this, to be a facilitator, is the idea of appreciative inquiry, which, just really quickly, it's a fancy word of just, you recognize first, before you criticize anything or question anything anybody does, you basically recognize the value in what they're doing and acknowledge the good, like the way that we're all told to give feedback to students, right? You kind of say, oh, I really like this about what you're doing. Have you considered that? So you kind of have this model of, trying to tease out the good in what the people are doing, so that they're not, constantly having to defend everything all the time, but you're kind of saying, okay, here's the good, and have you considered that? And that model is great. I think we should follow that model in faculty meetings and staff meetings, and not that we shoot everything down. It's a yes and kind of a model, if that makes sense.
Before I go to Rachel, I'm going to ask you the same question that New Paltz. Diane put in the chat, a question about how can we get involved. I did put the link to the interest form in the chat. It'll also be on the slides that we share out. Alternatively, if you email oer@suny.edu, Tony DeFranco and I, I'm more than happy to schedule time to talk with you and your colleagues about Lumen Circles, and probably more importantly, put you in contact with faculty across the system. I think we're well over 350 faculty that have gone through Lumen Circles, or will soon go through Lumen Circles. So you can talk kind of on that collegial level. But back to Rachel at New Paltz. Your colleagues say, why did you do Lumen Circles? You say, well, you should do it because
it's practical, actually. So we talk a lot about the reflection, and that of course is important. It's practical. You can tweak things. It's not a heavy load. It's something that I find myself doing in chunks throughout the week. It's not as if I sit there for an hour and a half on one day. I'll do a little bit because it does need to be kind of spaced out a little bit so you can try to implement some little change, and then you reflect on it, and then you look at what your peers did. And I think too, by doing this, it's not a heavy load, it's enjoyable. We also get a sense of what our students are doing in our own classes. As you said, Chris, about the feedback, we get practice with doing that ourselves. And I think that just informs our pedagogy.
That's great. And there's some comments in the chat. Jamie is in her second Lumen Circle, and she's recommending it for all faculty, new and experienced. So slightly off script, I didn't give our panelists this questions, but in sitting and attending and participating in the SUNY Online Summit, I've been struck this week kind of a deconstruction that's going on, whether by accident, chance, or by design, of the traditional kind of faculty student role and kind of how we're all learners, we're all educators, we're all sharers, we're all consumers, we're all contributors. Trudy, this probably sounds familiar to you, knowing your meta literacy work, but I'm just wondering, holistically speaking, if the members of the panel could kind of speak about, even outside of Lumen Circles, what supports do you need, internally, externally, as learners, as students, as educators, to grow in the ways that you want to grow? If you could just kind of open that up, kind of what works for you or what isn't working for you. Go ahead, Trudy.
I think the structure of doing it, I mean, I know I've got lots and lots of webinars I want to go back and watch, and will I ever watch them? I'm not really sure. But because this is, there are things we have to do each week. Rachel was talking a little bit about the need to space it out. There's a day on which you're supposed to post, when you're supposed to respond to others, and then when you respond to the people who've responded to you. So it really keeps me sort of engaged over the whole week. And that structure, I think, is extraordinarily important for me to do it. And I think the coming up with ideas based on what people are saying, what I'm sort of pushing myself to do, that also works really well. One thing I've been thinking about as I've been listening to others is that I almost want to draw my students into it and say, I am doing this because I am in this Lumen Circle and we have been talking about doing this, and that's why you are going to go through this type of thing. And I think I have mentioned it once or twice. I did with my first year students in the fall. Not sure I've done it with my primarily seniors this spring, but they are sort of guinea pigs in a way. And sometimes I feel like I really should talk to them about, why this is happening to them. So it's keeping me on my toes in a way.
Thanks. And Nicole, I saw you nodding and raising your hand. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Just to echo what Trudy was saying, we sit down, we go to webinars, and we go to professional development opportunities and conferences, and then we come back and think a week from now, a month from now, we're going to get back to this. No, you have an idea draw. You find an idea, you want to jump into it. That's great. You don't have time, you can save it for later. People come up with wonderful ideas in your group, and you have the ability to say, hey, you know what? I want to think about that. And here's a practical application in my discipline that I can learn from. So it's not just this random idea. Here's someone using it well, getting feedback. So it takes that pressure off that you can sit back and say, okay, maybe next semester I want to try that using this topic. And at least I know the pros and the cons, and it's already kind of worked out a little bit for me, how I can apply it in my course or what I need to watch out for. I know not just as a facilitator, but also as a fellow in the past with Lumen, you have a discussion forum. I mean, you have your circle, but you can throw things out to the entire platform, or you can throw things out to your circle. And I've done that before where I've started a discussion. If someone says, hey, this is a great idea, I'd love to try it, I will put that in a discussion, new ideas, so that at the end of this entire 9-week session, you can go back and just copy and paste or take a screenshot, and you have all of these little blurbs. Hey, I wanted to do multimodal learning. So I used Kahoot as a game. How did it work? How did it not work? And in this class, hey, I want to take a look at more time on task. So I did X, Y, and Z. So you have those different options and you can start to build and create out your own idea of what is it, what did I want to go back and do somewhere down the line. And here's how it worked.
Thanks. Somebody else want to chime in? As you're thinking, certainly take any questions from anybody in attendance. We've got some people in the chat that are chiming in that are active participants in Lumen Circles. Glad to read of good experiences there as well. I'll flip the question then. We've talked, I think, pretty glowingly about your experience with Lumen Circles and kind of what it brings to you and your students and changes you've been able to make in your classroom. The flip side of that is, what's missing? What would you like to see there? Sophia, you mentioned you're going to take the upcoming the diversity, equity, inclusion module that's coming out in the fall. One of the advantages we have with Lumen as a partner is it's not, the typical transactional vendor relationship. There's real conversations that go on. The diversity, equity, inclusion theme circle is one of them. They stood that up really out of a conversation with us. So if there's other things that you see as professionals, as educators, as learners, that's missing right now from Lumen Circles, what would that be, if anything? Rob, I think I see you nodding your head.
Well, you just saw me thinking.
Okay.
I mean, I do wonder about, well, one thing that I joked to Lisa Levinson, our facilitator last semester, is I wish I could create a tag because sometimes I think it should be a tag and it's not there. So I just hashtag it anyway, even though it can't link. But the other thing I was wondering about is, within SUNY, we have these different professional groups like the SUNY Council on Writing, SUNY COW. And I'm wondering if, like, I don't know, it's just me thinking out loud, like, what if SUNY COW were to sponsor a, Lumen Circle akin to what BARD does with their Institute of Writing and Thinking, where it would be, what if you want to work on literacy across the curriculum? Or what if you want to work on, whatever the project is that, some kind of group like that would sponsor? I don't know.
That's an actually excellent suggestion, Robert. I mean, I think that, we've actually been approached too by a campus where they wanted to have their own kind of campus focused or campus based circle. And, I think we've been in discussions about other initiatives where we could take kind of this model or something similar to this model and adapt it. And so I would definitely be willing to help anyone who wanted to maybe do this. And we could obviously approach Lumen as well and see if they want to be partners, right? But the idea itself is not something that's proprietary necessarily to Lumen about having this kind of critical reflection happen. The technology piece that they have is pretty slick, and as you all know, I mean, that definitely helps doing it online that way. But just the model itself, I know we have some courses at the CPD that utilize the tags that Lumen has for the work that they do, and they don't use the actual platform as well. So yeah, that's an excellent suggestion, and I think it's one we've been thinking about. So if anybody has a specific concrete idea they want to try that out on, please reach out to me.
Trudy, go ahead.
What I was just going to say, there's times I'm slightly frustrated because the course I'm teaching this spring is an online asynchronous class. And there's times it says, what did you do in class with your students this week? Or what do you plan to do in class with your students this week? Well, actually, I'm not. I mean, and I've got a lot of my content already written and up in Blackboard. So there's times that I have to try to figure out how I can make this work. So that's just been the slight sort of misfit that I've found.
No, that's a great point. And I think that use of class in various places, not directly tying to your experience. Rachel?
Yeah, that makes me wonder now, bringing that up, Trudy, because I wonder if there's something even with modalities. Back in the fall, I was the only person actually in a classroom. So that was weird. Once a week I was in the classroom, but this semester I'm teaching one of my courses async. And I think it'd be interesting maybe to do something around the modality, especially of async, for our undergraduate students, not so much grad school, they're fine with that, but where we could talk about, hey, what do we do in this weird teaching environment, even though I've been teaching asynchronously for, 20 years, but not with such young first year students.
And Sophia, anything from you? All's good?
Of what I want more than what we already have.
Yes.
My request to SUNY was always to create a network of expert OER users versus novice OER users. Because what I was always saying is that, for example, Dave Usinski, who was on the call but had to attend the webinar at 4, he was here today earlier, is to me, one of the best resources I could ever imagine in SUNY, readily available to answer any question at any time that you ask him. And I would really have liked to have a circle of this math faculty that have common goals, let's say a statistics group, and then for example, the discrete math lady that you introduced me a couple of weeks ago to, and she was so helpful and so passionate to participate in her circle and to share resources with me. And these are people that I have never run into other than collaborate in situations like that. And then I would just like to keep the conversation going. That was the end of our circle. Last fall. It says, let's keep the conversation going. So now you have your network that is your circle, and I would like to see that continue in some way. And in our case, I would like to see expert OER users to have a platform where they can collaborate past the circle or past the professional development or past the OER conference or past the SUNY Online Summit. So I would like to see this become some kind of a norm in SUNY. And I know that we have the workforce group that I have applied to, but we don't hear from the math people very much.
Okay, so
Nicole put a suggestion in the chat. So Nicole, I didn't realize you could do that. They allow you to, they provide connections to others.
You can actually do it yourself. You can go in and take a look at different fellows from different disciplines outside of your circle, and there's always discussions going on. You can propose a discussion, which is great. You can jump in. I mean, I've jumped into a lot of them that are very far off from my discipline. And again, you're just learning more information, sharing, curating, and helping one another. And then you can take that back. I've had people that say, oh, I've learned from such and such, and tag them in their comment. You have to look them up. I'm going, who is this person? That's fantastic, but not part of our group. And you want to go learn more about what they've done, which is such a wonderful idea that you're able to take a sneak peek at what other people are doing throughout the entire platform.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. I don't think we mentioned that your circle is pretty much private to the people in your circle. So what you post doesn't go beyond those individuals, but you can choose to make certain reflections and meta reflections public. And some, I don't know if anybody was asked to do that. I don't think my reflections must not have been good enough. I was never asked, but I don't know if they ask people, but you can do that as well. I thought in the last few minutes we have left here, are there any questions anybody else would like to ask? And Mike and I have been asking most of the questions. There have been a few in the chat. Trudy asks a good question. Do you have access to the library once you're no longer fellows? I believe so. So like I was able to log in, even though I, again, did mine back in February of 19, fall of 19.
Yes, you have access to the library. You have access to everything, all the resources in your circle. Your circle is still live even after it's over. But what I want to ask Nicole, who is a very brave one to facilitate this spring, is how do you go to the public? Do you go to the community area for that, or?
Yes, you can go right to the community, and then you can take a
Okay.
look by discipline. You could take a look at SUNY faculty. You can drill down as far down as you need, or like Chris was saying, you also have people who have posted and made their reflections public. So you can always take a look at those. I commonly refer to my fellows, take a look at so-and-so. So if you're having trouble with this, and just hyperlink them to somebody else's open posting.
But don't they choose certain ones, right, for kind of best practices?
They do, but you can also make yours public.
No, I came across a colleague and I had no idea she'd been in a circle, and hers was like this great thing, like best practice. So I was able to congratulate her, and I said, wow, can you share that in another context? So that was, again, I would never have known about it.
Right.
And that's actually one of the things I like about this model too, is that, I don't know how many of you do scholarship of teaching and learning or scholarly teaching work. I mean, it can be a bridge or a platform to that as well. Because, essentially, what you're doing is you're coming up with your own kind of action research questions, to put it in that vernacular, right? You're starting to kind of think, not just, you're thinking like a researcher. And then again, just a hop, skip, and a jump to maybe an article or something like that, if that's something that you're interested in, either because you're interested in it, but I know for many of you that's counts as scholarship on your campus. Any questions from anybody in the audience that they want to chime in? Or I know there are some others here who have indicated in the chat that they've participated as Lumen Circle fellows. I won't put you on the spot, but if you wanted to chime in, that would be cool. If you want to add anything to what's been said, or again, just any questions or any ideas for professional development that we should be offering system wide. This one's been great, and the great thing is we didn't have to do it. We had a great partner, facilitate it for us, and fortunately enough, we could pay for it for now.
I do want to mention that I was very thankful when I realized that SUNY could sponsor this professional development for me, because I do believe that my college was unable to support me in this opportunity. So I was extremely, extremely grateful to be selected.
That's great to hear, Sophia. And as I started the hour and a half ago, saying, OER is more than content, I think we've made a real strategic choice in SUNY OER services to, leverage the monies that we do get from the state of New York and the budget to, put a lot of resources into professional development, into faculty development. Faculty that choose to use OER are faculty. They're teaching with it, and they're doing other things besides OER in their classrooms. And the more that we can support those in diverse and distinct ways, in addition to kind of what's already offered in SUNY or on your campus, if you're lucky enough to have a professional development center on your campus or a faculty development center, I think is an advantage to us all. So we certainly are working as hard as we can to continue that support, Sophia, and others that may be interested in future Lumen Circles or other opportunities that come up.
We can't promise it'll be like that forever, unfortunately. Yeah, this was definitely a great opportunity. All the stars aligned, didn't they, Mike? All right, so I guess if there aren't any other questions or comments, we'll end a bit early. Alex, is there anything you want to say before we finish for the day? Well, this session, I should say. I'm not sure if there's anything else on the agenda.
Hey, no, I just wanted to say thanks to you all and to this wonderful panel, and to all of the information. It's so interesting to sort of see parallels between what you did and are doing with Lumen Circles and our experiences in the SUNY Learning Network and Open SUNY in terms of building faculty community around a shared sort of common interests of thinking about pedagogy as a reflective practice. I mean, I experienced the exact same things with groups of faculty. And so I wonder, like, how can we, what could we do together more, you know? Um, and how could we maybe combine or leverage that? So I'm so glad that you did this presentation, and I'm so glad that we have been connecting in other ways, like over Oscar and Waymaker. And I want to continue to explore options, possibilities, opportunities, like Sophia was saying, and all of the rest of your amazing panelists. You know, I mean, there is so much goodness in this experiential kind of a process facilitated, sort of creating opportunities for faculty to interact with each other and to you know, take time, a little bit of time, to self-reflect and to think about their own instruction and what they're doing and have feedback, all the stuff that you guys talked about. So I was very engaged by and interested in the whole conversation from that angle, right? So thank you, all of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks to all our panelists and everybody that joined us today. And thanks, Alex, for those great summary. Certainly, I think there's some connective tissue that we could make even stronger. So look forward to that.
Yeah, so I want to think about that with this summit. I'm trying to think about things differently. I've had to think about photography differently. I've had to think about, you know, engagement differently in terms of planning this and doing it. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about is, how do we take some of the things, the conversations, the opportunities that are kind of bubbling up from the summit, how do we take that further into the rest of our year? Like, you know what I mean? What could the outcome be for this? Where's our opportunity to chat about that? Because we just had a great conversation around what you guys are doing. But you know, like there's lots more, I think, to the conversation in general. And so one of the things I did in order to kind of address that, and this was based on Doodle input from the Doodle group, was we have a session on Friday, tomorrow, the last session of the day, for people to come together and talk about and think about what are outcomes that and what could that look like in terms of things that we could do, you know, going forward as a result of things that have come up during the summit, right? So I would love to invite folks who are on the panel or who are in this presentation to come to that session tomorrow, to bring that up as one of the items that we might put on a list to explore. And then all you need is a plan. Right? And some meetings on a calendar. And I'm right, like it just needs to, like, not, you know, it's not be ephemeral. But right now we're feeling all like interested and engaged in this particular topic, but tomorrow or the next day I got to go on to something else, and it goes away until next year, right? So so I would love to think about how we can take some, you know, amazing kernels of ideas of things and move them forward that we work on during the year, and then next year we come back and talk about what we did or how it went or whatever. I don't know, but anyway,
Create another circle.
Well, we've actually talked about, you know, when we first started this idea of bringing folks together who participated in these circles later, you know, at some future point, you know, so, you know, we have to, Mike and I can talk and, you know, maybe come up with something, just a way to, you know, keep the work going beyond our initial pilot with this project. So great idea.
All right, well, this is the last session of the day today. Tomorrow we are starting bright and early at 9 a.m. As usual, with a session on micro-credentials. We have just a couple of sessions tomorrow, and that's our last day. So I hope to see everybody there. Thanks again to the panel and to you, Chris and Mike, for moderating. So thank you again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Rachel, Sophia, Rob, Judy,